Alright, what's up YouTube? Today is Black Friday and we're doing something a little different today. I'm not going to be on a motorcycle today, so if you're here just for motorcycles, I apologize. This episode isn't for you. Today I am in my 1963 Ford F250 and I'm going to the turkey run in Daytona with my dad, who is in the Jeep behind me. I don't know if you can see him or not back there. So the turkey run is something me and my dad do every year. We left after Thanksgiving last night and we drove up to New Smyrna, and right now I'm leaving the campground that we stayed at last night. Alright, so just left the campground that we stayed at last night. Basically, we left after dinner and drove up to New Smyrna to stay at a campground. We stayed in New Smyrna because it's a little cheaper than staying in Daytona, and it's like half an hour. But I thought that I would bring you guys along for this trip because every year when we go to the turkey run, it's always an adventure. 2 years ago was the first year that we both drove. Before that, we had just trailered our vehicles. And that year, it was an adventure. So I drove from the house all the way to Daytona, which is about 2 hours in this rig. And I got all the way up there and realized that I had forgotten our passes and had to go back. So that was my adventure from the first year that we went. His adventure was his Jeep from the factory had a hardtop on it, and at some point his windshield frame had been replaced with a fiberglass one, which is fine if it's supported by the hardtop. But the problem is he took his hardtop off and replaced it with a bikini top that he has on it now. And without the support of the hardtop, the fiberglass windshield frame broke and his windshield hit him in the face going 50 miles an hour through the forest. So yeah, that was fun. And my mom was riding with him and she was, not happy. They were both okay. All that happened was they cracked the windshield and had to replace all the windshield components. So for Christmas that year, me and my brother went halves. He's on a new steel windshield frame so that he can have his bikini top. So that was the first year that we went. Last year, well, not the first year we went, the first year that we both drove. Last year was a much bigger adventure, and seeing as how this year I'm already halfway to Daytona and haven't had any adventure, I'm going to tell you the story about last year. So last year I was driving from my house, he was driving from his house. He was driving a motorhome and towing his Jeep. So anyway, he was driving the motorhome and towing his Jeep, and he was just gonna meet me at the campground that we got. So I take off work early on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, because we didn't do Thanksgiving dinner last year. We only did the turkey run. So I left work early Wednesday and I got to Daytona around 6 o'clock or so. And as I'm pulling onto International Speedway Boulevard, I noticed that my little light on my dash that tells me that my alternator isn't working is on. So I'm like, okay, not a big deal. I'll check that when we get to the campsite and fix whatever is wrong with it. Well, coming up to that light at International Speedway Drive, or Boulevard, whatever it is, the main road that goes through Daytona, my truck stalls at the light and will not start again for anything. So I pushed off to the side of the road, and another hot rider that was there sees me having troubles and pulls over and helps me. And we decide on the side of the road there that my alternator's bad, and the alternator's not charging the battery, and the battery just died, and that's why it wouldn't run anymore. I'm like, okay, not a big deal. I've got roadside assistance as part of my insurance, so I called them. They'll tow me 18 miles or something like that for free. So I just had them tow me to a Walmart parking lot, because my dad's gonna be here any minute now with a trailer. Just get me somewhere out of the road, well lit, safe place to be in a truck that's not running. So I get to Walmart and call my dad, and he's running late. He'll be here in a couple hours. Not a big deal. I walked to Walmart, I walked to McDonald's and got some dinner, and just watched some Netflix on my laptop until he showed up. No problem. So he finally gets there, and my original plan was the motorhome he's driving has like 5 batteries in a bank. So my original plan was just pull one of those batteries out and swap it with mine, just to get to the campsite, and we'll work on it in the morning. But he gets there, and we decided to go ahead and work on it a little bit while we've got the nice lighting of the Walmart parking lot, and discover that it's just a loose connection on my starter solenoid. That was it. Tighten that up, it's charging, good to go. Or so we thought. So we head on down to the campsite, and for some reason Google Maps wanted to take me everywhere but. So first it decided that we needed to go to the prison, and so like we're back there, we're like, oh well, maybe it's like Google thinks it knows a shortcut or something, and it's gonna like cut through the prison parking lot to get to the trailhead, or I don't know. So we ease through the prison, and we finally get to the back, and there's nowhere else to go in this prison parking lot. And this big burly security guard comes out and goes, "You boys lost?" And we're like, yeah. And I'm like, I've got my map on my phone, and I'm like, can you like help us get to this campground? And he was like, I don't know where that is, but y'all can't be here. And we're like, all right, we'll figure it out. And we turn around, we head back out and find a parking lot to make Google Maps recalculate. And we finally get it recalculated, and we're going on along, and then Google Maps next decides, you know what, let's go down a hiking trail. Like, let's take your motorhome and the trailer and your 2-wheel drive truck. Yeah, you guys need to go down a hiking trail. So finally, like, I gave up on Google navigation, and I'm just like looking at the map and the roads, and I think I figure out how to get to the trailhead. And so I try my way, and it works, and I get to the main gate. The problem is, it's like 9 o'clock by this point, and there's a sign on the gate that says, get here by 5 to get the gate code. So I'm like, well, crap. So there's a sign on the gate that says something about if the gate's not working, call this number, and it's got a phone number listed. So I give that number a call, thinking, you know, maybe they know the code for the gate. They don't, but they know someone who does, so they transfer me. And they don't know the code either, but they know someone who does, so they transfer me. And that happens 3 or 4 times before I finally get the gate code, and then we're in the clear, we're good to go for the night. Not quite. So we're 5 miles down from the campsite, from the gate or so at some point. And we're going down this narrow little dirt road that if there was traffic coming the other direction, one of us would have to pull over to let the other pass. That's how narrow this little road was. And so we're going down, and it's kind of twisty, but it's not too bad. We're going down here, and about 2 miles in, the road is underwater. Like there's a river going across it. Now, keep in mind, this was about a month after we had a major hurricane come through last year. So, like, that's where all this water came from. Oh yeah, I need to look for a Publix. Forgot to do that. So, we're like, okay, and it's sand. We're in Florida. The bottom is sand, or I'm assuming it's sand. It's like a real dark tannic water, and it's like 10 o'clock, so it's dark out. And I'm like, my truck's 2-wheel drive. I don't know how deep the water is. I don't know what's on the bottom of the water. And even if I could get across it, he's not going to with the motorhome. So I'm looking at the map and find out that there's a back entrance to the park that's actually closer to, well, I don't know that it's closer to the campsite, but there's a back entrance to the park that we just gotta go around the park and go in the back. So I'm like, sweet. Now the problem is that we're 2 miles down this narrow little twisty dirt road with no way to turn around the rig that my dad's driving. So what we ended up doing was ratchet strapping a few flashlights to the back of the trailer, because the trailer doesn't have backup lights. And my dad, being the superhero that he is, backed up 2 miles down this narrow little twisty dirt road to where we could get out of the park and turn it around. Ridiculous. So it's like a state park, and it's a pretty good sized park, so going around it took an hour, because of where it is, that there weren't any roads like to cut across. We had to go all the way back up to the interstate and then go down to the next exit and then come back across. So that took a while. And then as we're getting almost to the back entrance of the park, Google Maps decided, it's like, hey, how about we go in this side entrance that's a 4x4 Jeep trail? And I'm like, Google, I'm tired. Just take me to the front gate. And it's like, okay, we'll just go in the gate. So we get to the gate, and the gate's closed, and I'm like, awesome. Luckily, it was the same code as the front gate, so we get in, and we're, I think, 4 miles from the campsite, from the gate. And again, it's a narrow little dirt road. Maybe it's a little wider than the other site was. So we get in, and it is the roughest washboard road I've ever driven on. And on my 50-year-old 3/4 ton suspension, it was pretty miserable. I was going 10 miles an hour, and it was just awful. So we get a mile or two down this road, and all of a sudden I hear a loud bang come from the back of my truck, and my engine revs up real high, and I just coast to a stop. And I'm like, well, that's not good. So I kind of coast over to the side of the road and hop out of the truck, and I take a peek underneath, and my drive shaft is laying on the ground. And I'm just like, awesome, there's no way this night could have gone better. Now, to give a little bit of backstory as to why this happened, when I first got my truck, the stock gearing in the rear end is really, really low, and all of the seals on the stock axle were leaking. So, being the poor college student that I was, instead of rebuilding all of that the proper way, I had another 3/4 ton axle out of a Chevy truck, which they're both Dana 60s, they're the same thing. But that axle came out from behind a truck that had an automatic, so it had a little bit higher gearing in it. So my solution at the time was, I have this good axle with higher gearing, I can cruise better in it, I'm just going to swap it. So that's what I did. The problem was, the distance from spring to spring on my truck was not the same as spring to spring on the Chevy truck. The springs were further apart on the Chevy truck. So what I did was I made some narrower spring perches to sit in there, to have the springs something to sit on. And what I should have done was welded them in, but I didn't do that. What I did do was just kind of put them on there and then put the springs on that and then clamp everything down and assume that the force of the springs would be enough to hold them. And it was for a long time, until I got in this rough washboard road. And what happened was, one of the springs hopped off of its perch and the axle shifted back about an inch or so. But that axle shifting back an inch or so was enough that now my drive shaft wasn't long enough and it fell out of the slip yoke. So, haha, that's what happened. So we ended up just unbolting the drive shaft from the U-joint and just putting it in the back of the truck. And by this point it's 11 o'clock, pushing midnight. It's getting late. So we just leave the truck there and I hop in the motorhome and we go find the campsite. And then once we found the campsite, we unloaded the Jeep and went back and towed the truck to the campsite with Dad's Jeep. Now also, this is the first major trip that I've ever taken in this truck that I didn't bring every single tool that I own. Go figure, right? So the next morning we get up, this is Thanksgiving Day. We get up, we go to, we take the Jeep to the car show for a little bit. It's cold, it's rainy, no one's really there. It's kind of a slow day at the car show. So we hang out for a little while and then we go get, me and Dad eat Thanksgiving dinner at Steak and Shake. And then we take the Jeep back to my house because I live a little closer than he does. So we take the Jeep back to my house to grab some tools. On the way to my house, the high pressure side of his power steering system decides that it doesn't want to do this anymore. So we lose power steering all the way down. Yeah, right? Because this weekend couldn't have gone any better. So we get down to my house just driving. The power steering was working. We just had to top off the fluid every like 20 minutes or so. So we get to my house and we stop by the parts house to get a new high pressure power steering line. They don't have one, but the next store south does. But by the time we got there, they were closing. There's a bunch of chickens just chilling on the side of the road. So anyway, they're closing. They won't be open by the time we get there. So okay, fine. We'll just spend the night at my house. We'll go grab one in the morning. So we get up Friday morning and go get a new power steering line, and come back and think, you know, we'll just swap this in real quick. We'll head back up, hang out in the car for a little while. Easy peasy. Not quite as easy peasy as we had hoped. So for those of you that have never worked on the steering system for a Jeep, the steering box is underneath the bumper. And is a huge pain to get to. And we ended up having to use a crow's foot on like 3 different wobble extensions to get something on it, and we could only turn it like a 1/16 of a turn at a time. So it ended up taking almost all day to replace that line. And then we head back up. And by the way, it's been raining this entire time. And remember, my dad still doesn't have a hardtop or doors on his Jeep. So yeah, that was fun. So we head back up, and we don't get there in time for the car show. And we ended up just going, we stopped in for a minute just to meet up with a buddy of mine for a couple minutes. And then just going back to the campsite with all the tools to work on the truck. So we get back and we get the truck jacked up, and we go to take the leaf springs loose. And that is when we notice that not only did the leaf springs pop off that perch that I made, the perch isn't there anymore. Remember when I said I didn't weld it? Yeah, I really should have welded it. So since that was something that I made at my dad's house with, you know, a welder and a blowtorch and like all these metal fabricating tools, I couldn't just go to a parts house and get another one. So what I ended up doing was going to Lowe's and getting some of the biggest washers that they had, because on the bottom of the leaf springs, for those of you that have never had axles off or leaf springs out, there's a little pin that centers the leaf springs and is supposed to keep them from walking around. Well, I didn't want that pin to sit directly on the axle, so I got a stack of washers to wrap around that pin so that the leaves could sit on the washers and then the washers could sit on the axle, and then I would just like crank the U-bolts down super tight. And it was super sketchy, and I was a little uncomfortable driving it that way. But the campsite was pretty close to the speedway, So I wasn't really too worried about it. I wasn't going that far, and if we had an issue, we had a trailer at the campsite that we could just, you know, put it on the trailer if we did have an issue. So then Saturday, we did limp it into the car show, and had a pretty good day. It was, I mean, it was pretty nice. It wasn't really sunny. It was still kind of overcast a little bit, but it was a nice day. There were a lot of cars. It was a good time. So then Saturday, we weren't staying for Sunday last year. I don't remember if I had something I had to get back for, or if Dad had something he had to get back for. Whatever the case was, we didn't stay for Sunday. So Saturday, we had a good day at the car show, and we go back to the campsite, we pack up to head home. Being as sketchy as the fix for my truck was, I didn't want to drive it all the way back to my house with that sketchiness. I just wasn't comfortable with that. So I put it on the trailer and sent it to Dad's house, and I drove his Jeep home. And that was the end of the weekend. Except it wasn't. Well, it almost was for me. So the very well-worn tires that were on the trailer that were perfectly content carrying a 3,500-pound Jeep were not at all happy with my 5,500-pound truck. So no worries, we'll stop at a gas station, give them a little more air, help them out. So I think I'm good to go. I head out. I make it about to New Smyrna. I was pretty close to where we stayed last night, actually. When I get a call from Dad saying, hey, the tires in the trailer are super low. Do you still have that little 12-volt air pump in the Jeep? Can you bring that back to me? And I said, like, I'm halfway home. Like, can you just like stop at a gas station and spend the $1 to blow them up at a gas station? And he said, I'm at the 4th gas station that I've tried that's had a broken air pump. I just need you to come back. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll be there in, I don't know, half hour or so, whatever. So I head back up there and blow up his tires, and then all's good, and I head home. I get home. That's the end of my adventure for the weekend. I woke up the next morning no, Dad called me. I don't think it was a text message. I think he called me. And he said he got about halfway home, and you know, he's driving along, everything's happy, and he said he kind of felt like a wiggle. And he you know, checked his mirrors, like everything looks good, so he didn't think anything of it. And a couple minutes later, you know, feels the same wiggle. And checks his mirrors, and now there's sparks going back there. We're like, okay, so he pulls over in a gas station, and those trailer tires that weren't happy earlier, one of them completely came apart. That was the first wiggle, and then now the other tire, it's a tandem axle trailer, the other tire next to it, now that it has to carry twice as much load because its partner gave out, it wasn't happy about that, so it gave out too. Now, he only had one spare, but he didn't want to put that spare on because it would still be carrying twice as much load as it wanted to, and yeah, it wouldn't have made it any further. So he went into the gas station and explained the situation to the guy at the counter, and said, you know, is it all right if I leave my trailer here for a couple hours while I go home and get some more spare tires? And the guy's like, yeah, I guess you're gonna have to. So luckily he was cool about that. So Dad went home, dropped off the motor home because it didn't really want to pull it either, and traded it for his truck, grabbed a few extra tires, went back, changed the tires, and then took it home. And then I think he said he got home at like 3 o'clock. So yeah, that was our adventure last year. So far this year, the only problems we've had is with my truck. I'm having charging issues again. I think it's a bad voltage regulator. Well, I know that a bad voltage regulator is a problem. I don't know if that's the only problem. So my truck is still not charging and the battery's just dying. What I did to combat that last night to get that here is I just plugged my power wire into my signal wire for the voltage regulator. So now my alternator is just charging my battery and not regulating it. So I'm driving with the headlights on. Okay, if you guys could stop pulling out in front of me, that'd be great. Yeah, so I'm just driving with the headlights on to hope that it doesn't overcharge itself. And I've got my bad voltage regulator that is still under warranty, but yesterday being Thanksgiving, the parts house wasn't open to go swap it. So sometime today I'm gonna swap it. But yeah, we got to the campsite, no issues last year. At first, Google Maps wanted to take us into the back entrance, so I was kind of having flashbacks a little bit. But yeah, we got in. We got in late, but the campground was nice enough to leave us our packet taped to the door. And then, which was nice because I hadn't even left a deposit or anything. So we went in and paid, settled that up this morning, and all was good, so that was nice. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a nice, smooth trip this year. But you know, that's part of driving old cars, is that they break down, and it's an adventure just owning them. So as hectic as last year was, it was an adventure, and I loved it. It was great. We had a good time. Even though we only made it to the car show really for one day out of the 3 that we planned on, you know, that's what happens. But anyway, I'm bringing you guys along this year, and whatever happens, I'll be recording it. So yeah, it'll be a good time.